No one in the crowd knew what was about to happen. It was a cold, quiet morning in a small English town. People were standing outside a local children's hospice, holding hands, wearing scarves, and whispering softly. There was no music, no big event, no camera crew. It's just a group of people gathered for something they couldn't fully explain. Many of them were parents. Some were nurses. Others were just townspeople who had come to show love and support. Inside the hospice, children were lying in beds, most of them very sick. Some were too tired to speak. Others were just staring out the windows, waiting for something they didn't have words for. Suddenly, a black car appeared down the road. It didn't make a sound. It moved slowly, carefully, like it didn't want to disturb the peace. People turned their heads, unsure of what they were seeing. Then someone whispered, "It's them." At first people didn't believe it, but then the door opened, and out stepped Prince William. Then Princess Kate. No royal music. No press. Just two people stepping into the cold with warm, quiet smiles. The crowd gasped. As some people covered their mouths, others froze. One older woman in the front, holding a candle for her grandson, dropped it without noticing. Her eyes were full of tears. She whispered, "They came." Tears began falling everywhere. Not from shock, not from excitement, but from something deeper. It felt like the weight of months, even years, was lifting. The parents who had been silently grieving, who had been waking up every day with pain in their hearts, now saw someone standing beside them, not above them, beside them. Kate's eyes met the crowd. She didn't wave like a celebrity. She didn't stand back. She stepped forward. She walked toward a young boy in a wheelchair, no older than 6. His mother stood beside him, her face tired from long nights and too many hospital visits. Kate knelt down slowly. "Hi, sweetheart," she said gently. The boy didn't speak. He just looked at her with wide eyes, then leaned forward and hugged her without a word. His mother broke down. She tried to hold it in, but the tears came fast. Her hands covered her face. She had not seen her son hug anyone in weeks. He was always scared, always quiet. But something about this moment made him reach out. William moved through the crowd like a friend, not a prince. He stopped and shook hands, bent down to speak to a father holding a photo of his daughter who had passed away last winter. The man's lips trembled. "She loved you," he said, his voice cracking. William didn't speak right away. He simply took the photo and held it close for a few seconds. Then he looked at the man and said, "She still does. We're here because of her, because of all of them." The father cried harder, his shoulders shaking. A nurse nearby had to turn away, tears spilling down her cheeks. She said later, "I've never seen someone so powerful be so soft. It was like the world stopped for just a little while." People in the crowd were hugging, some were kneeling. Some had never met the royal couple before, and never thought they would. But in that moment, none of that mattered. They were no longer just royals. They were a light in a place filled with too much darkness. One little girl, wearing a red coat and holding a drawing, walked up to Kate and gave it to her. It was a simple picture of a heart and 2 stick figures. Kate bent down and asked, "Is this us?" The girl nodded. "You came," she said. Kate hugged her tightly. "Yes, we came." Everyone watching had tears in their eyes. Some cried openly. Others just stood there, hearts full, eyes wet, unable to speak. It wasn't about fame. It wasn't about titles. It was about being seen. It's being remembered. Being loved, and in that moment, no one felt alone. As William and Kate moved slowly through the crowd and toward the hospice doors, people began to whisper prayers, send kisses, and clap softly, not because they were royals, but because they had given something more than money or speeches. They had given time, presence, heart. They had shown up, and that made all the difference. People were still wiping their eyes when the doors of the hospice opened. Prince William and Kate walked inside, and for a moment, the building felt like it was holding its breath. Everything was quiet, soft. Even the walls seemed to understand. What was happening inside the rooms were small and warm. The walls were covered with children's drawings, and stuffed animals sat on every bed. The smell of flowers mixed with the soft hum of medical machines. The children here were all very sick. Some would not live to see another season. But today, something felt different. In the hallway, nurses stood silently. One of them, a woman named Julie, had worked there for 17 years. She had seen joy and pain, life and death. But when she saw Kate reach out and hold the hand of a tiny girl named Rosie, her eyes filled with tears. Rosie had been quiet for days. Her illness made her too tired to speak. Her parents had almost stopped hoping. But when Kate sat beside her, something changed. She didn't ask questions. She didn't make a big gesture. She just smiled and gently ran her fingers through Rosie's soft brown hair. Rosie blinked. Then she smiled back. Her mother gasped. Her father dropped his phone because his hands were shaking. That smile. It was the first one they had seen in a week. A few feet away, Prince William was kneeling beside a boy named Max. Max loved toy trains. And even though his body was weak, his mind was sharp. William asked him about his favorite train. Max lit up. I like the blue one, he whispered. It's the fastest. William grinned. Then that's the one I want too. Max laughed, a small sound but real. His mother leaned against the wall, tears rolling down her face. She had forgotten what it felt like to hear her son laugh. Back in the hallway, people were gathering quietly. Staff, volunteers, even strangers who had followed the couple from outside. No one was being loud. No one was rushing. They just wanted to watch, to feel something real. One of the volunteers, an old man named Terry, had been through his own loss. He had lost his granddaughter to leukemia 2 years ago. Since then, he spent his days helping others at the hospice. Never asked for thanks. But when William shook his hand, Terry couldn't stop the tears. I didn't think anyone remembered us, he said softly. William held his hand firmly. We never forget. That's why we're here. It wasn't a line. It was the truth. In one of the back rooms, a teenager named Ella had been watching from her window. She had written letters to the royal family since she was 9 years old. She'd never sent them. They were just for her little dreams. She folded into hearts and kept under her pillow. Today, Stream stood at her door. Kate came into the room slowly. She sat beside Ella and noticed the paper hearts on her nightstand. Are these your letters? She asked. Ella nodded, but she didn't speak. She looked too surprised. Her eyes were wide. Her hands were shaking. Kate smiled and reached into her bag. She pulled out one of Ella's letters. I think this one is yours, Ella gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. Then the tears came fast and without warning. Kate opened her arms and Ella fell into them, sobbing quietly. Everyone watching cried, too. Even the nurse in the hallway had to turn away. She later said that Hug felt like the whole world had come to say, we see you. We hear you. Care. Back outside the room, people were starting to clap. Not loud, just soft, gentle claps. A thank you. A sign of love. Some cried as they clapped. Others whispered prayers under their breath. William and Kate didn't rush. They stayed as long as they could. They looked into every face, held every hand, spoke with every parent, every child, every volunteer. Their eyes were soft, and their smiles were kind. Before leaving, William looked at the crowd and said, quietly, this place is full of heroes. You may not wear crowns, but your hearts shine brighter than gold. And then they were gone. But the tears remained. Not tears of pain, not just of grief, but of something else, something rare. It's the kind of tears that come when the world feels heavy, and then someone helps carry it, even just for a moment. Even after William and Kate had left the building, people didn't move. No one wanted to speak. It was as if time had slowed down, holding everyone in a quiet moment of peace and emotion. Many stood with tears in their eyes. Some still held hands. Others stared at the door, not ready to let go of what they had just seen. For some, it felt like something holy had passed through. One mother in the crowd, Sarah, had lost her daughter to cancer 3 months earlier. She hadn't smiled since. She hadn't even left her house until today. When she heard that William and Kate were visiting the hospice, something in her heart told her to come, and now she was crying. Not because of sadness, but because she felt seen again. For months, no one had asked how she was. She felt invisible. But when Kate had hugged the girl in the red coat, and when William had wiped the tears of the father holding the photo, Sarah's pain didn't feel so heavy anymore. "Made us feel like we mattered," she whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Like our children mattered." Inside the hospice, the feeling was the same. It was quiet now, but the silence was soft, not heavy like before. There was a kind of warmth in the air, the kind that comes after something truly beautiful. One of the hospice workers, a young man named Leo, sat down in the hallway and cried for the first time in years. He had seen so much suffering, and he always stayed strong. But today had touched something deep inside him. "I've watched so many families break here," he said, "but today they were held, even if just for a short time." The children were different too. Rosie, the little girl who had smiled at Kate, was now holding her mother's hand tightly. Her face, once pale and quiet, now had a soft glow. She didn't speak much, but she kept whispering. She came. Max, the boy who loved trains, wouldn't stop talking. His laughter filled the room, and the other children started smiling. With him, his nurse, Olivia, couldn't believe the change. "It's like a light switched on in him," she said. "It's like hope walked in and said, 'You're not alone.'" Volunteers were wiping their eyes while folding blankets. Even the old piano in the corner, untouched for weeks, was now being played by one of the older children. A soft, slow melody filled the halls. It was simple, but it reached every heart. In the garden outside, small groups were forming. People were sharing stories. Some brought candles, others brought flowers. One man, who had never even entered the hospice before, placed a toy train near the entrance and said, "For the brave boy inside." These small acts meant everything. They were reminders that love still lived here, that the pain had not taken everything, and then something special happened. One of the nurses walked to the door with a large white piece of paper and pinned it to the wall. At the top it said, "They showed up." Below, she handed out pens. Parents, children, workers, strangers, everyone began to write. Just a sentence, a name, a message, a memory. Some wrote, "Thank you." Others wrote names of their children. One note simply said, "You gave me strength today." Soon, the whole page was filled. More paper was added. The wall became covered in words, drawings, hearts, and messages. It was no longer just a wall. It became a memory, tribute, sign that something powerful had happened. And as the sun began to set, the light from the sky fell gently across that wall. The words shined in gold. People began leaving slowly, quietly. Some hugged strangers. Others wiped away their tears and walked with lighter hearts. The crowd had come broken, tired, and quiet. They were now walking away with something else. Something unspoken but real. It was the feeling of being remembered, feeling of being loved without words. And though William and Kate were gone, their visits stayed in every heart. They didn't bring big speeches. They didn't bring news crews. They brought something even better. They brought tears. And healing. And healing, even for a short time, is everything. The next morning, the hospice felt different. It was quiet but not heavy. The air felt lighter, like something warm had passed through and stayed. The rooms were still filled with pain, with children who were sick and parents who were tired. But there was also something else, hope. Word had spread across the town. People were still talking about it in the streets, in coffee shops, in hospital rooms. Did you hear? William and Kate came. The story moved through every corner like a soft breeze, touching hearts that had forgotten how to feel. At the hospice wall, the paper messages had now tripled in size. One mother returned in the early morning and brought a photo of her daughter. She placed it under a note that read, "You reminded me she still matters." She knelt for a while, holding the picture close, crying in silence. A volunteer walked over and knelt beside her. No words, just presence. Inside, the children kept asking questions. Will they come back? Do they know my name? Child said. When she held my hand, I wasn't scared anymore. In the small kitchen where staff had morning tea, no one spoke for a long time. A young nurse, only 6 months into the job, finally broke the silence. I thought I was too weak for this job, she said, eyes full of tears. But yesterday, I saw what kindness really looks like. I think I want to stay. Everyone nodded. One nurse reached for her hand and said, "You're stronger than you know." At the center of all this change was a simple truth, William. And Kate had come not to fix things, but to feel them. They didn't arrive with answers. They came with their hearts open, and that made all the difference. Back at the palace, no cameras showed what they were feeling. But close staff would later say that William had tears in his eyes when he spoke about Max and his love for blue trains. Kate couldn't stop thinking about Ella and her letters. They both felt something they couldn't forget, and neither could. The family's Rosie, the little girl who had smiled for the first time in days, now kept her window open. She looked out at the garden, waiting, hoping. Her mother sat beside her, smiling through her own tears. "Even if they don't come again," she whispered, "we'll never forget what it felt like." Max's father brought in a small toy train the next day. He placed it near the bed and said, "Blue, just like you wanted." Max smiled and whispered, for him talking about Prince William and Ella Sweet. Quiet, Ella had taped the letter Kate gave her to the wall beside her bed. It wasn't just a letter anymore. It was proof that someone had listened. Someone cared. A few days later, something beautiful happened. The hospice received a box. Inside were small handwritten notes, one from William and one from Kate. Each note was personal, kind, and full of warmth. Alongside them were books, toys, and a small framed quote that read, "You are not forgotten. You are loved more than you know." The hospice director read the notes aloud. As she read Kate's soft handwriting, tears rolled down her cheeks. Everyone in the room cried quietly. Parents, children, staff. It wasn't the gifts. It wasn't the royal names. It was the love. True, gentle love. The kind that does not need cameras or applause. The kind that simply shows up. Later that evening, the wall of messages was taken down and turned into a memory book. A nurse carefully placed each message, photo, and drawing inside. On the cover, they wrote, "The day they showed up." That book now sits in the lobby. Every new family that enters the hospice reads it. Some cry, some smile.
Oh, yeah.
All of them feel something strong, something real, and the story lives on, not just in the news or in whispered memories, but in hearts. In the quiet smile of a child who knows they matter, in the hug of a mother who no longer feels alone, in the steps of nurses who walk a little taller, knowing they are seen, in the tears of strangers who came to watch and left changed. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can give is not a speech, or money, or a gift. Sometimes the most powerful thing is simply to show up. And on that one special day, Prince William and Princess Kate did just that. And no one will ever forget it.